Hello, folks. I know we're just hopping in right now. We're waiting for just a handful of more people to come into the webinar. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, and we will be recording this webinar to be posted on our YouTube channel. So in case you need to hop out, or if you are watching on Facebook but want to catch this later, it'll be available both in our Facebook group and also on our YouTube channel. My name is Eric Tapper. I am the Director of Business Development at GlobalComix. I'm joined by Gamal Hennessy, our VP of Content, and Chris Carter, who will be hopping in just in a moment. He is our CEO, and he will be giving the meat of the presentation today. That being said, this is our GlobalComix demo and Q&A. We're going to be talking about a handful of different things today. Monetization, analytics, and more. What I'll say before we get started is for those that are in the webinar, please direct all of your questions to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That is the easiest way for us to methodically go through all your questions and make sure we answer anything you have. Other than that, feel free to hop into the chat as well and and share and say hello. And for the folks that are joining us on Facebook, who will be probably delayed by a few seconds, feel free to comment on the post and we will answer anything that comes up. So welcome everybody. Without further ado, I hand it to Chris Carter.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the advanced GlobalComix demo and Q&A today. Today I will be walking you through some of the more advanced tooling that we have around monetization and analytics, and some of the other new features that we've recently added. So first, what I'm going to do is hop in and do a very quick little refresher from where we left off previously. Now, the previous demo took us through the upload process and the setup and getting everything ready and publishing and putting it live for folks. And so quickly today, I'm gonna do a quick refresher to get things set up and ready for us to start doing what we wanna do. But before that, you'll notice this thing that I'm looking at here on my screen. I'm in my account settings page, and I have this page tab on the left here called Pages. One of the things that we've added over the past 2 months is the ability for users to be part of multiple different publishing pages, or even manage and own and create multiple different publishing pages. This might be particularly useful if you're doing collaborations with other creators, or if you're using your account both for business purposes and working as part of a publisher while maintaining your own profile. So in this case, we're gonna hop into this webinar demo publisher that I've already set up. Now, quickly back in, looking at what we have on the interface, you get very used to with GlobalComix, you have your left navigation on the left side and you have your tabs navigation in the top right. We can jump straight into creating a series and getting set up so that we can catch up to where we left off last time. You'll notice that this create new series, if you've been using GlobalComix in the past, has evolved a little bit. We've added some more bells and whistles as well as some more configuration to what we allow people to do here. So we can call this particular comic a webinar series demo, and we'll give it a genre for education. New is this ability to define what the original publishing year is and what the status of the title is. Status could be things like preview if you're currently running a Kickstarter, or a one-shot if it's a single issue, volume, or release. It's being finished, if it's canceled, ongoing, etc. So we're going to say that this is a ongoing title. Next, when you create a comic, you're going to choose what kind of page layout the comic is. You might see this traditional page, which is your standard print format, A4 or leisure or whatever that might be, where you have multiple panels, often side by side, and sometimes a spread. And we've added this ability for vertical scroll panels, which is something that you might be familiar with. Some People sometimes call it the Webtoons format, where you have a lot of different panels kind of stacked on top of each other in an endless scroll kind of experience, very much designed entirely for mobile reading devices and not so much for desktops and laptops and these types of things. Certainly not print. And over the next month or so, we're going to be rolling out native support for vertical scroll panels to everyone on the platform, giving a complete and comprehensive support for all kinds of comics that you might want to publish. So for this demo, I'm going to quickly set up that it's a paid comic, and the default free preview where the paywall will kick in shall be first 3 pages of each release is free. I'm going to quickly go through and set up a little bit of information around the cover image and these types of things, making it completely branded around our demo here. I'm going to give it a couple of themes and quickly categorize this in a way that this is a Western toon art style. And maybe there's some obscene language. So next up, now we're ready to publish. I'm going to quickly go in and create a new release. A release is GlobalComix definition for an issue, a chapter, a volume, whatever term that you want to use depending on type. Tankobon if it's a manga. They can have one or multiple pages. New here is this file requirements little dialog. So if you're wondering what file formats and what the constraints are when you're uploading to GlobalComix, you don't need to look very far. You can simply click this little guy up here and get a list. And so the first thing you'll notice is that there's not a lot of hard constraints on the system. We'll take pretty much anything that you throw at us, whether it's zips, PDFs, CVZs, JPEGs, PNGs, TIFFs, GIFs, etc. Now, the recommendation side of things is mostly around making sure that you have the highest possible quality of and resolution of content when you upload it, so that in the future, if we want to make the default reading experience with a higher resolution or retina-based image, even on desktop devices, we have those high resolution assets already in the system and can simply generate them without you needing to upload and remanage all of that. So quickly go in and pull the zip file in, and upload, and process these 6 pages that's in the zip file. While that's going on, I'm going to give this release a title, save the settings, and now all of the pages being uploaded and processed, and we have our system knows exactly everything about it. And the first thing you'll notice here is that you have 3 pages that are free. Now, if you remember back to when I created the comic, I said that I wanted the first 3 pages of each release to always be free, even though I set up a paywall. Now, if this was a bigger graphics novel, and I have 170 pages, 150 pages or so, I might want to go in and change where the paywall actually hits for readers. And the reason for this is, generally speaking, you want to have a paywall that isn't immediately on the first page or first 3 pages or so. You want to have a paywall that kind of makes sense where in the story for you, there's a big hook, or where enough content has been given to readers to where they're starting to invest emotionally in your story and will want to continue past the paywall. So if you wanted to change that, you can simply check the different pages that you wanted and hit always free to read. I'm going to do this. So in this case, 5 of 6 pages is actually free. I can also go in and turn that off for individual pages. Great. So now that we've caught up with where we were, why don't we look a little bit more into the advanced monetization settings? First thing we're going to do is we're going to hop back into our comics admin page. And we'll notice here that we're currently publishing in language English. GlobalComix is a platform that lets you manage your content in multiple languages. So if you're working with a translation team, or you have someone that's volunteering to translate your content to French or Brazilian or whatever that might be, you can actually add new languages. And you can set up and publish releases in multiple languages. You'll also notice that your monetization schema can be different for each of these languages. So we're going to start with Brazilian Portuguese being free on this one. And as you'll see, we haven't uploaded any content on Brazilian Portuguese, so we're presented with an empty release list. We can go back into English here, and you'll see, oh, there's our little release. All right, so today we're going to talk about monetization. And in our advanced section, there's two settings for monetization. There's crowdfunding and settings around monetization itself. I'm going to start here. First, top of this page that you see is the same choices and selections that you made when you created a comic. So if you created a comic and you made something free, but you really wanted to make it paid, you don't need to worry. You can just go in here and you can change the default monetization model from free to paid. And you can set up your specific default free preview model here if you later find out that you chose something that wasn't ideal for your particular title. The next thing you'll notice is that you have two languages here. You have Brazilian Portuguese and English. And in this case, we'll see that Brazilian Portuguese is free and English is paid. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting. We've had a couple of creators and some publishers that come to us with some very specific use cases. For example, creators might have sold the rights for their comic to a specific region, to a specific distributor in the United States and Canada. But they still want to be able to put it up and make it available for folks in the rest of the world. Or they're interested in using the monetization and paywall for their content, where they're also selling physical prints, but are looking to build an audience and expand their reach and expand their readership elsewhere in the world without compromising. And GlobalComix actually will let you do that. So let's take a look. In this English title that we've created, we've set it for default for free, but we're not sure that, maybe the readers in France and Spain and Germany and the UK know enough about who I am. I haven't established a reputation yet, etc. And so maybe we want to be able to let them read it all for free for a while and give them an opportunity to just discover new content. So in order to do that, you can click add a new country-specific rule. And you can go in and you can choose off the countries that you want. So in this case, we're going to have United Kingdom, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Denmark, etc. And we'll say that for these 6 countries, it's actually going to be free. The rest of the world will remain paid. This is great. So now, actually, I have this comic where I'm borrowing a paywall for folks in the markets where I don't want to sacrifice, but I'm also making the content available for folks elsewhere. And especially if you're working with a lot of physical space, this might be an option that's very interesting for you. So you don't need to risk your sales locally while still making it available globally. Inversely, you can also do an interesting thing around making things unavailable. And an example of that would be if you've sold your licensing rights for Brazilian Portuguese in Brazil to some company, and you're not allowed to actually put it up and available in Brazil. But elsewhere in the world, you want to make it available. So here, you could actually say that Brazilian Portuguese is free to the world, except Brazil. And in Brazil, it's just simply not available. Now, in this scenario, what would happen is that readers in Brazil would simply not be discovering your comic in the browsing section when they're looking at a Brazilian version. They'd be able to access the English one, depending on the rules that you set up there. So this kind of completes the things that you need to set up your monetization and licensing and all of these sometimes intricate aspects of distribution deals. If you're working with specific companies or regions for your content. Next up on this list is crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is something that we see a lot of people doing. Kickstarter in particular has thousands and thousands of comics that are being funded over the years. And we've started by adding beta support for crowdfunding promotions inside of the GlobalComix platform. So let me walk you through what this is. This crowdfunding section for each comic serves two purposes. The first purpose is for being able to promote and show folks that you have an active Kickstarter campaign that's ongoing. The second purpose is for readers that are using GlobalComix to be able to find comics that are actively being crowdfunded or comics that were crowdfunded in the past as a means of discovering new content. So let's see what this looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and input a Kickstarter with a goal of 2,500, and we'll just give it a default link where what you put in here is the actual link to your crowdfunding campaign. And I'm gonna put this at some point in the past. Say that from May 1st at 2 p.m. until June 1st at 2 p.m. This was a crowdfunding campaign. Now, you'll notice immediately it jumps back down into this previous crowdfunding campaign section. And the most important aspect here is whether or not the campaign was successful. So once the campaign completes and the expiration date goes out, as a creator on GlobalComix, you'll get a little banner notification that asks you, hey, we noticed that your campaign was finished. Was it successful? And all you need to do there is to click yes or no. So we're going to say, yes, it was successful. Now what's going to happen is if I look into this browsing section here, you'll notice that there's a little filter that says crowdfunding in the left. And it has three choices: all titles, which means all comics that has crowdfunding or not, if they're actively being crowdfunded, or if they were successfully funded in the past. And we'll see here that this one was actually successfully funded in the past. Actually, this is one of our other demo comics. I didn't end up publishing this release. Let me quickly go ahead and do that. Here we go. Publish. And so now, yep, there it shows up. It was successfully funded in the past. So let's look at active campaigns. Right now, there's no active campaigns for comics on. Let's add one. So this little toggle here, display crowdfunding banner, is a toggle for you where you can put up a banner on all of your comic profile pages that will direct readers to your crowdfunding campaign on whichever service it is that you might be using. Quickly go in here and set another little campaign active. Start a link, and we'll do from last Tuesday, 2 p.m. until let's say 14 days. I know that they do these 17 days things these days. And we'll go ahead and set to, yeah. So now that this is actually active, you can see that it's not in your previous history yet. But if we go into the comics public profile page, you can go in there by going to the page itself. You'll notice here that we have this banner and it's showing up on all of these pages, no matter where you are. Even on the little release section page. And with this, if I were to click this link, it'll take me to the actual crowdfunding campaign page. Looking over into our list over here, clicking on active campaigns, there we are. Our comic is actually now discoverable as being active with crowdfunding. That kind of, those are the basic tools on a comic level for how you can do monetization in GlobalComix. But there's one more piece, actually. some of you might be familiar with services like Patreon and Coffee and Tiffany and all these kind of tools that you have for folks to send you donations and to where you can give them little rewards for recurring for every month, giving you a little tip. And it's one of the things that we've heard from our creators on GlobalComix, that they would love to be able to direct their readers and their really engaged communities to a place where they can do that on GlobalComix inside of the comics universe itself, so that it's actually a comics platform that folks are consuming content on that's meant and designed around the comics consumption experience, and not necessarily just an image gallery on some other site, and driving people away from where you have people engage in your titles. So we did something about that. And what we did there is we added support for donations. Find the settings for that in your publisher profile or creator profile, and you can hit down into the revenue settings. And this donation section here is where you can turn on and turn off donations. You'll notice here that your revenue share, 95% in this case, is much higher than the content revenue share, which is paywall. And that is because we believe that creators that are not looking to paywall their content, but are looking to find a couple of different extra revenue streams or a couple of different extra channels of income, should be empowered as much as we possibly can. And we feel that GlobalComix needs to be able to support all kinds of creators, whether or not they want to put a paywall up or not. So how does this work? Well, it's pretty simple. When it's turned off, the comic page has this little thing where it says published by. If we open the publisher page, we see not so much on this one, it's kind of empty. But on the button side, there's only settings because I'm an admin. Let me go and turn it on. So I'm going to turn on donations and I'm going to set a goal. My monthly goal is going to be $975. And I'm going to save that. Now, on this comic page, you'll notice there's a little button here that says support. And on the comic profile page, there's a little button, or publisher profile page, there's a little button here that says support. Now, if you click these, you get this nice little donation dialog. You can donate however much you want, really. I mean, we cap it at $1,500, all the way down to $3. And all you need to do is put in your credit card information and send a donation. And what you actually get for that is, of course, you get the joy and thrill of helping fund the creator for their work and their time. You get this nice little supporter badge on your avatar site-wide when you're making comments and posting and participating in discussions. And you get access to new early access releases. So early access releases is a new concept that we're introducing, and we're going to be launching soon on GlobalComix. So let me quickly tell you what that is. In our monetization section, you see this little checkbox here about default early access window. Early access is a way for creators who don't want to paywall their content to reward the folks that are supporting them with donations, whether they be one-time or recurring monthly, as a perk, as a thank you for giving a donation. They can set a little window for each release that they publish, during which the backer or supporter, as it were, can get access to their content before anyone else. Now, this isn't really a paywall because at the end of this window, if you set it to 7 days, then everyone else gets access for free. So it's only a way of, kind of paying to skip the line. It's one of those skip the line things. And it's part of the tooling that we're rolling out for folks that want to support their backers. Other things that we're looking into is, specials and extras. Things like sketches and wireframes and scripts and all of these kinds of composite pieces of content or unique pieces of content that is part of creating comics that readers wouldn't normally necessarily see. And we're pushing out the ability to share that with readers also in the near future. So what does this look like? Well, when you've set this up and you've published a release that has early access, it looks like this. It shows up on Comix profile page, and it's got this nice little locked icon. Now, if I were to log in here, I gotta create this account first. If I were to log in here, clicking unlock would simply pop up the same little dialog as hitting support, and we'll do that in just a moment. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about before we bring things over to Eric, who's going to be talking us through analytics and some experiments that we've done around marketing and about tracking readership and such. GlobalComix is very happy to be able to support Teams at this point. Now, Teams is, for those of you who are publishing where there's more than one person creating the comic, or you're a publisher and there's multiple people, multiple departments even, managing what you're uploading. You might have someone that's particularly responsible for the finances of things. You might have someone that's responsible for reviewing the analytics and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Teams is that. It's everything for everyone, where you need more than one account managing a profile. Teams have roles, and roles have permissions. So the default example here is that, or default set of roles is you have an administrator. If you click into this guy, you'll see full access to everything. It makes sense, they're the admin. If you click into a role like content manager, whose main job is around creating, uploading, and publishing comics, you'll notice that they have different permissions. And actually, as the admin, if the default permissions aren't something or aren't working for you, you can always change and update them. Now, this means that members that come into your page, of course, you can turn off access to all of your financial settings if you don't want them messing around with that. And only access to managing the things that you're supposed to manage. So in order to add a person to a team, you simply click on this members tab and click on add new member. The only information that you need is their email address. So if they already have an account on GlobalComix, that's great. They'll automatically get added to the team, and they'll get a little notification up in the nav here that says, oh, so-and-so invited you to the team. If they don't have an account, that's not a problem either. We'll just send them a little invitation. So I'm gonna send this to our demo, and you can see here that this particular member doesn't have a username yet. The account was not created, and they're invited. Now this invite will expire after 24 hours. So if they don't do anything within 24 hours, you'll have to send another invite if you want to bring them on. So looking over into my inbox over here, we can see here that I got this email invitation. It says I've been invited to join this team. So why not click this button? And okay, I'm prompted with creating my account. So I have team invitation to the demo publisher. Okay, cool. Christopher invited me as a content manager. Give myself a name, and I'll give myself a password. And there we go. Now you can see as me, I'm now a member of this publisher here. And if I click in, you'll notice that the revenue settings are gone. I don't have access to promo codes, and I only have access to certain things that I'm supposed to have access to. Can't make any changes on the subscription side. I can't make any changes on the payment method side. And I certainly can't add or change any information about other users. All I have access to here is using the analytics and managing the series. So before I go and I leave this over into Eric's capable hands, now that I've logged in, I can show you what this looks like. So when you want to unlock, you get the same supporter badge for early access. You can see here, when it unlocks, 1 week says this. Okay, so I think at this point we're ready for Eric to talk a little bit about our analytics.
Chris, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here right now. It's good to be back on the screen. I just want to remind you if you have any questions that come up, really anything about the platform or anything you're seeing, just put them in the Q&A box. Or if you're watching on Facebook, don't forget to comment and we will certainly answer in real time as best we can. So the next component I wanted to talk to you about are the analytics, something that I'm really excited about, and I think a lot of our creators and publishers are really excited about. And as you can see in your page settings, there is an analytics thing to click at the top of the page where Chris's mouse is. And what's going to come up is your analytics dashboard from the last 30 days. Now, since this is a demo publisher, there's not going to be much information here. Even if we dig a little bit deeper into the other components, we're not going to see much. So we're actually going to go into one of our creators' analytics. I believe they're with us right now, and we're going to go to Artcrumbs, and we're going to check out their analytics because they have something a little more exciting. We at GlobalComix, have been running a variety of tests on various social media platforms to see what kinds of organic, low budget community marketing, what kinds of things you can do with that. So at a glance at this 3-day dashboard, we can see that there is some numbers up on the screen. You got unique readers, total visits, which could, are repeat visits, page reads, and panel reads. Right now, the comics are all free, so there's not going to be any revenue, but when you start having paying readers come through, that's where that information will come up. Similarly, engagement on the platform and email notifications, but we're not going to go into that just right this moment. So I would like to go into the page reads component for Artcrumbs' wonderful, wonderful title, Onami. And we're going to look at that title from the perspective of the past month, broken up by days. So Chris, if you scroll down just a little bit, right there is good. We're going to see that on September 4th, we made a post on, or several posts on Reddit, driving people to Onami. Now, clearly, we can infer that those posts had a pretty, significant effect on readership, but let's turn off panel reads, which are the interactive panels, and let's just look at page reads and visitors for now. So in that single day, and then spilling over into the day after and the day after that, we had almost 500 unique readers and around 4,700 page reads. And now that's pretty cool. We can say, okay, our efforts, they paid off. That's great. What do we do with this information? How do we understand this a little bit better? And you'll notice at the bottom of the screen now is our acquisition sources. And this screen is going to follow you around throughout the analytics section of the platform. So if we zoom in just a little bit, we can read it a little bit more easily. And we can see that there are 6 columns here. And I'll quickly describe what each column means. So Medium is going to describe the type of channel that you're posting in, right? So for example, a social channel, a referral channel if it's on a different website, basically things like that. In terms of source, that's going to be your specific channel, whether that is Reddit, whether that is your newsletter, whether that is Twitter, Facebook, your personal website, etc. Then we're going to move into campaign. And this is where you can get a little bit more creative. And as you can see, we just wrote GC, so we know that it's us posting, not Artcrumbs. GC Onami, which is the specific title we were promoting, and then the date, so September 9th, 2020. And that way we just know what day we posted, what we were promoting, and that it was us and not somebody else. And then finally, the term is going to, in this case, is describing the specific community that we posted in. So as you can see, we posted in the subreddit, which is the community, a community of Reddit, the subreddit of manga, alt comics, fantasy book club, webtoons, comics, webcomics, etc. So each of these generated a different amount of unique readers. Each of those unique readers, of course, read a different amount of pages. Um, that being said, we can now understand that that graph, which is the aggregate number of all of these things, is broken down into the variety of communities that we've reached out to. All of a sudden, this dimension is unveiling what kinds of communities are interacting with your work and coming and reading it. So we now have this sort of, key to the castle to understand how are my efforts actually paying off. I post on social media all the time. I guess people are reading my stuff, but where are they coming from? I don't know. And unless you have Google Analytics on your website and you're tracking people at that level of granularity, which we know not many creators at this time are, this is the best tool that you can use for that. And I don't think you'll find it on any other platform. So with that in mind, the next question, of course, is, well, how do I actually get these things to show up? So we made a spreadsheet, which I'm sure you all love. I know I love spreadsheets. I'm being, sarcastic, of course. They're not the best thing in the world, but they work. And basically, they help us generate the UTMs, the parameters. In the green box there, you'll see a custom link that has all of the information that helps our platform decide or understand where those people are coming from, and then delivers that information to you in the screen we had just seen. How do we do that? How do we generate that green box? In this case, we put the URL that we want people to land on, which in this case is chapter 1, page 1. Thank you, Chris. We're going to describe the medium, right? The type of channel. In this case, it's all the same. It's social channels, but you have a variety of options. The source, in this case, we did all Reddit, subreddits on Reddit, communities on Reddit. And then we named the campaign name something that we would recognize and be able to organize. Finally, the keyword term, the actual community we posted in. And then all of that information gets squished into the generated URL box. Now you have your custom URL, simple as that. Now, we can send out a copy, like a blank copy of this sheet if you would like it. If you also Google UTM generator, that's just the letters UTM. There's a lot on the web, all over the web. This one just happens to be set up to organize things a little bit differently that we thought would be helpful. With that in mind, the left side of this spreadsheet, we just set it up so we know who was posting. So if you're working with a couple different people, you know who's responsible. We wrote down the date in an easily recognizable format, and then the caption. So we just know when we're making a post, we're just keeping track of all the different things we're saying. So we're not repeating ourselves. We're not saying the same thing in multiple different groups that might not necessarily appeal to all those groups in the same way, etc. Once you take that, once you have that generated URL, that's what you post. Now, a question that always comes up is, are you going to see all of that like long link on the post? And the answer is it will be visible if you hover over the link, but generally speaking, it depends on where. So on Facebook, not necessarily. On Twitter, it shortens the link. On Reddit, you have the option to shorten the link. So, and if you just wanted to shorten the link yourself without having to worry about which platforms do which, just use something like Bitly, and Bitly will make a very small link so that it just looks like a easily clickable thing, and you're not scaring anybody off. Once people click those links, it shows up in the information in your analytics, and you're off to the races. So, deep breath. The next thing we're going to do, I should say the last thing we're going to do in analytics is actually look at my favorite part, which is the release analytics. So if you go back up to the top of the page and you go underneath page reads to releases, we're going to pull up the same release with the same information. And you're going to actually see on the bottom of the graph page numbers for that particular release. And the blue graph is the unique readers reading through the pages. So for example, page 1 has 491, and then as you move all the way through, you see the numbers dwindle down as they naturally would. And so maybe you are left with 35 to 40 people that are reading your comic 100% of the way through. Now all of a sudden you know, okay, these communities are engaged this way. I'm not getting as many people reading all the way through as I want. How do I present this differently? Am I reaching the right people? Like, you can start to ask these kinds of questions now that you have this information in front of you. The same acquisition sources are going to follow you at the bottom of that screen, so you don't have to toggle between. And then another thing that's really interesting is this green line that's going to pop up. That this is showing you the seconds people spend reading a given page. So you see spikes and troughs and people reading a variety of pages at a variety of different time lengths. So if you see that page 12 is spiking, that might be interesting for you to then go check out page 12 and say, why are people reading this for 30 seconds? That's a long time compared to the other ones for them to be reading that. And you'll notice too that the very end also has a drop off. So maybe we can infer that those were the credits pages and people were just like, okay, there's no more content. I'm not gonna like spend a lot of time here. So all that said, you now have the access to be able to understand who's coming, what are they doing, how are they reading through it, how long are they spending on the comic, and then finally you can then go back out into those communities and re-engage with them, and figure out different ways to reach them with a variety of different value propositions. So with that in mind, I think that concludes our demo portion. There are some questions popping up in the Q&A. Please definitely ask any questions that come to mind. If you forget and we end, feel free to reach out to us as well. But other than that, I think we'll open it up. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add, or Gamal, anything you wanted to add before we jump in?
Yeah, I think you should actually explain why that there's a natural drop off between the beginning of the book and towards the end of the book. I mean, you'll have some situations where if, let's say, you initiated a paywall and all of a sudden people had to pay, there would be a natural drop off. But you might want to explain why there would be that drop off even if all the pages were free.
Fair enough. So that is going to, I think I heard a publisher told me once that there's some sort of industry standard that if you can't hook somebody in 6 pages, they're probably not going to like your book. And I think you'll see that happening here. And that's not to say Onami is, unworthy. If anything, quite the opposite. I think it's an amazing title, and I think you should all read it. Truly, the artwork and everything about it is great. It's just that it's possible that the audience that's coming to check it out, not every single person that comes to the site to read that is going to necessarily find value in it or necessarily connect with it in the same way that maybe the other people would. So you've probably heard things like sales funnels, and what does that mean? So when you're driving, let's say 500 people, to a specific page, to a specific comic, you can reasonably expect that some percentage of them is just not going to stay or not going to convert into a paying customer. It's sort of like you go to a Comic-Con, you might be exposed to thousands of people, but in reality, there's only going to be that handful of people that make it to the bottom of your funnel. And you're seeing the same thing here, just in a digital way. Is that helpful, Gamal?
Yeah, I think that actually
Actually, I can add another example. I had one of these sessions with one of our publishers, and we were looking at their analytics. I haven't actually gotten permission to share this particular graph and view, so I'm not going to bring that up. But we discovered that in their case, they'd set their paywall at page 31, and they had an abnormally big drop-off on page 17 for some reason. And so, first of all, users spent a lot of time on page 17, but then there were a lot of people that didn't go to page 18. And so they were wondering about that. So we went actually in and we looked at what did page 17 look like specifically. And it turns out that that particular page was packed with 6 very wide, vertically stacked panels of discussion back and forth between the same characters. It's kind of the same picture pasted over and over again, just the text that was varied. And the inference that we could make was that maybe that particular layout and the way that it was structured was not a good fit, and people kind of was like, this is too much, I'm overloaded, or something like that. And so using this data for looking for things that you can learn about your actual content creation and the way that you lay out your pages is something that I think, and I'm excited to be learning about. What can we learn, and what kind of actual, like, bigger scale analysis can we make around that?
So we have two questions from William to respond to. And William says, I'm going to be releasing an opt-in email for email subscribers of my first 5 pages. It would be nice to send them to GlobalComix. Is it possible to only allow people who have got a link to a GlobalComix page? So I'm actually not sure if I completely understand. Chris, do you have a read on that?
I think that this is kind of, it's this question of, can I share it exclusively only with this one small group? And the answer to that is no, not at this time. You could use the early access tool, but that's not really the same thing either. What you could do is, if you didn't mind if people discovered your page specifically, is you could hide your series for as long as you're sharing it only with that group. To hide your series, you go into, let me go into my demo folder so I'm not messing up. Art Chrome is over here. So you could go into your advanced section and turn off displaying the comics in the list, which means that it won't show up in the browsing section. It won't show up on your creator profile. Only if you know the URL for the comic itself will it show up. And that would be one way to accomplish that. But generally speaking, you know, GlobalComix is about spreading the comics to as many people as possible, not necessarily just a small group. So I don't think we'll be adding that specifically. There might be other versions of that we add in the future, like, for example, early preview access to a small subset, but that's a little bit different. I hope that answers your question.
Chris, wouldn't it be possible to use the promo code feature to allow anyone who signs up for the website or the newsletter to actually get the promo code, and then they can see the pages?
Yes, but it also means that anyone else that is paying customer could access it. And if I'm getting this question correctly, he wants to share it only with a small group and not with other people. So it doesn't really properly solve this use case.
The next question is, can we put a Facebook pixel on any of our GC page? Now, I don't believe you can put a Facebook pixel, but I do believe you can put a Google Analytics tracking ID. In other words, if you have a Google Analytics account, you can set up what they call a new property, which we can show you how to do offline, where you basically create a new code, and then your full publisher page becomes basically effectively an extension of your website. You have full granular user behavior, acquisition, etc. In that way. So Chris is actually showing right now on the screen a Google Analytics tracking ID that we have for our demo publisher. And that is showing us how people are moving through everything and how they are interacting with all of the different comics and moving from page to page and things like that.
The slightly more complicated answer to that also is that there's a lot of rules and regulations around what we can and can't do with tracking and embedding these third parties. So it's very hard to make a distinguish between embedding a Facebook pixel versus a Google Tag Manager pixel or an ad tracking pixel or anything like that because of URL forwarding and domain forwarding and all of these things. And we have to be sure that the information that we're capturing inside of our system is compliant with the GDPR and the California data privacy laws and such. And so while it would be technically easy for us to make the feature, I don't see that as being something that we're interested in offering in the best interest of our users' data privacy. All right, William says, regarding turning off comics in display, that would be like hiding a website page on your website, but giving access to it via URL, right? Yes, that is exactly correct. Kamal's comments, the promo code would be used for my subscribers while paying GC members would have access to the pages. That would be a good way to go. Oh, yes, that would work also for you. How many promo codes can you get at one time? Well, why don't I show you? In this promo code generation tool, you can create unlimited promo codes. And for each promo code that you create, you can have between 1 and 1 million people claim that particular code. So if you're making one only for 10 friends of yours, you set 10 and you share this particular code only with your friends. You could even make it unlimited access forever. Never expires. These things to give to like friends and family. But if you're, doing something like a Kickstarter reward, then maybe you give them a year. These types of things. Hope that helps. Anyone else in questions? We still have a couple more minutes, and we'd be happy to answer anything that you might have. Give us your best and worst. Okay. Well, I hope in that case that everyone got what they came for with the webinar. And if you have any other questions that were answered here, you think of something, you're more than welcome to either shoot us an email or hop in on our Discord. You can find the link in our forum section under community. And there's this GlobalComix Discord live chat. And you're more than welcome to come in and ask us any questions that you might have at any time. When we're around, we'll get to answering as much as we can. Eric, any last words before we close up shop?
Ken, Jurl, thank you so much.
Cool. All right, folks, we're going to hop off. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great evening.
You too.
Good night, folks.